got Tyson Fury taking on Francis Ngannou. So that's going to be our stream next weekend. I need to start doing the research for that, actually. But we're not here to talk about UFC. We're not here to talk about boxing. We are here to talk about WWE. And we'll have a little bit of a dabble in the other wrestling news that's kind of out there as well. What I do want to do, though, is kind of just go through Raw and NXT. That's the main reason why we're here, to kind of preview those two shows in particular. And so there's so much to talk about. Raw is absolutely stacked. I don't know if there's just a little bit of concern at the moment about the ratings. We have seen some of the ratings be quite low for WWE. Obviously, NXT is doing really well. But we did just see on Smackdown the ratings were down a little bit. And Raw, I think, was like a 1.4 million. So that's nowhere near. It's like 1.7, 1.8. That's considerably down. Smackdown, I think, just posted like one of its lowest ratings for a little while. Nothing disastrous, but just on the lower end of things. So I don't know if they're trying to get a bit of a spark going. They've announced so much for Raw. Like, there's so much for us to talk about. So obviously Logan Paul is going to be on the show, but it doesn't really seem like Logan's bringing his fans in with him. This is a little bit of a frustration, actually, because Logan actually mentioned WWE during the boxing, and he's mentioned it a couple of times, saying that he's a WWE superstar. He's going to go off and do some like more real, more rewarding, like WWE. And it seems like his fans kind of aren't really on board with it. During our watch-alongs and everything, people do tend to be like, did he just mention WWE? Like, they kind of scoff at it still. There's a lot of scoffing. It doesn't feel like he's done a great job of really getting across WWE to his fan base. So yeah, I don't think he's bringing many of his fans over, which is a real shame, and not his fault. I just think that you're either into it or you're not into it, you know? And I think people might watch the odd little clip online, but they're not going to sit down and watch a show that he's on, you know? So, yeah, good, I suppose, for retweeting the clips. Because we know that when he is in a match and he retweets a clip, that it tends to do quite well. They talk a lot about social media engagement, but actually bringing in viewers to watch the shows that he's on doesn't seem like that's really happening. So he's going to be on Raw. I don't think there's going to be a big boost to the show. I don't really know why he's there, to be honest, because he's in a feud with Rey, and Rey is on SmackDown. So, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it, but why is he on Raw? I don't really know. So, he's on Raw anyway. Just talking about Logan as well, it is worth saying, and I have said this during the watch-alongs, but what I like about these Sunday streams is it gives us an opportunity to put some of those thoughts from the watch-alongs into like a separate space. So, on the topic of Logan, I think Logan, it might be controversial, I don't know, but I think Logan should be the United States champion, and this is coming from someone that doesn't like celebrities having matches. I think Logan is hated. People really don't like him. He's a big heel, and I think someone like LA Knight getting that title from him, that United States title from him, monster heel, monster babyface, LA Knight getting a title, because he's probably not going to get that championship from Roman. So him getting like a mid-card title as like, you know, the next step in his career, and getting it from someone so hated like Logan, I've said during our watch-alongs, like that works for me. And this is coming from someone that doesn't like celebrities competing in matches. So, yeah, I really would be fine with that. But we can dig into that in a bit. I am going to jump into the chat as well, my friends. Hello to everyone that's joining us. I just want to run down Raw, then I'll jump into the chat and we'll save the NXT bit for a bit. I've got some news bits jotted down as well for us to touch on, but of course people will have questions. Did you see this? Did you see that? And we'll probably tick those off as we're kind of getting into a few discussions. But yeah, Logan is on the show. Obviously, the thumbnail for this and the title for this is Raw versus SmackDown. There are reports, and they came from Fightful, that we are building towards Raw versus SmackDown at Survivor Series. Now, at the moment, I've only seen reports that it's going to be a one-off match. I don't know that it's going to be the whole card, and actually, I don't want it to be the whole card. But at the moment, it looks like it's going to be a one-off match. So that kind of Adam Pearce, Nick Aldis feuds looks like, you know, it's just started. We know that Adam Pearce got kicked out of SmackDown. He might retaliate, but apparently that is going to build. Because actually, we're not that far away from Survivor Series. I believe it's like a month, and that's it. So they're starting the builds towards that. I think early next month, we've got Crown Jewel. At the end of next month, we've got Survivor Series. There is no premium live event in December. So there's a lot that's happening, and we're going to have to get it all done within the space of a month. 5 weeks, so that, you know, then we go into December where things get a little bit quiet, to be honest. December's always quiet. We'll do like a fun little Christmas match, you know, Miracle on 34th Street, whatever, and there'll be a few little feuds going on. But by and large, you know, we're just kind of waiting for the Rumble. So that's kind of how it was last year. Normally around Christmas, you'll get a tape show as well, which is a bit disappointing, but you can understand it because wrestlers want to be with their families and everything. So you tend to get like a taped episode of, depends what day Christmas falls on, to be honest. I think it might even fall on a Monday this year. So we're definitely getting a tape Raw, if that's the case, or a best of 2023 Raw. So something to be aware of. But yeah, we can talk about that a little bit more, who would be on the teams and all that kind of stuff. So Adam Pearce, Nick Aldis, Raw versus SmackDown. Maybe War Games as well is the belief, but at the moment, just a one-off match. So is Adam Pearce going to respond to being kicked out of SmackDown this week? We'll wait and see. We've got Sami against Drew. That was obviously set up last week as well. Sami Zayn against Drew McIntyre. Judgment Day are going to be kicking off the show. It's already been announced that Judgment Day are going to kick off Raw. Apparently, they're closing the show as well, as Jey Uso is going to be taking on Damian Priest. So Jey Uso versus Damian Priest. I think that closes the show, but Judgment Day definitely opening the show. And I did see some saying they were closing it as well. So I'm guessing Jey Uso, Damian Priest will close the show. Obviously, we've got an NXT Women's Championship match. Now, this is really interesting because it's Becky versus Indy, but Becky is also taking on Lyra Valkyria on Tuesday. So Indy ain't winning that. Right? It's just a fun little, here's Indy Hartwell. You haven't seen much of her, but she's actually quite good. That's what the match is going to be. Becky will get through that. Then she'll take on Lyra. Now, I think there's a chance Lyra wins that. I think Lyra is the one. From the moment Becky arrived, Lyra is the one that I thought she was going to lose the title back to. So I didn't think she would drop it back to Tiffany. I thought she would drop it back to Lyra and give Lyra a run with the belt. The only thing is, we have seen Xia Li step up to Becky. So when would we do that match? Like, maybe we're not going to do that match. I don't know. But I do distinctly remember Xia Li confronting Becky. So that's now got me second guessing. Like, is Becky going to beat Lyra? And then she's going to defend against Xia Li next week. And then is it going to be a case that Lyra gets an opportunity again a bit further down the road? Maybe it's still not quite time. Perhaps we're just going to keep stretching this out. Because in all fairness, we can still do Becky against Kiana. And who knows, maybe Jade is going to come into NXT. And if Jade is coming into NXT, then I'm sure Jade's the one that Becky will drop the title to. So, you know, I was thinking Lyra maybe this is actually going to be a sign that it's Jade Cargill that's going to be getting the championship. So maybe she won't be dropping it on Tuesday. But I always thought Lyra was the one. I really did. I always thought Lyra was the one. So that's going to be interesting. Aaron, shout out to you, my friends. I will get to your comment in a second, but I'm just going to... I've only got a couple more bits to do here. In fact, I've got one more bit to do, and that is apparently the Alpha Academy are going to be taking on the New Day. So that is everything that's been announced for Raw. We've got Logan Paul, Sammy versus Drew, Judgment Day kicking off the show and apparently closing the show. Jey Uso versus Damian Priest, Becky versus Indy Hartwell for the NXT Women's Championship, Alpha Academy versus New Day. So not bad, to be honest, not bad. For me personally, I'm very excited at Sammy being off on his own now. I'm very excited for Sammy kind of being on the show and having an opportunity to kind of spread his wings a little bit. So he's taking on Drew. I'm guessing Drew's going to cheat to win that, because we know that Drew is kind of turning at the moment, and we know that he's going to be taking on Seth, and we know that he's kind of a heel but not really a heel because everything he's saying is making sense. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. He's kind of heel but not really a heel. So I would imagine him cheating here would just further push him down that road, you know, would just further take him down that path. So Sammy against Drew, I think Drew wins, probably cheats. Jey Uso against Damian Priest is very interesting. I think that's a hard one to call because I feel like both need the win. I feel like both of them need the win. What I would say, though, is Damian losing because of some sort of distraction from the Judgment Day, maybe. Maybe we could go down that road. Don't know, though, because that's going to be tricky, isn't it? That's going to be... I don't know if the timing is quite right, what with Judgment Day having all the belts. Is the timing right to do that? I don't know. But then, is the timing right for Jey Uso to lose? That's a tricky little match, that is. Becky definitely wins. And honestly, Alpha Academy against New Day, I don't know. Who cares? I'm not bothered. That's a match that I'm not really don't give a flip about. But I would imagine Alpha Academy win. I feel like Chad still feels like the one to get that Intercontinental Championship. So again, do we really want Chad suffering a loss? Nah, I'm going to say no. So I'm going to say that Alpha Academy win that one. So that's Raw, and lots for us to get our teeth into, but yeah, we can talk about NXT in a bit. I do want to get to Aaron's comment. Aaron, my friend, I hope you are well. Aaron said, I know you don't watch TNA, but I would check out Ospreay against Mike Bailey. It's absolutely awesome. Did you like Smackdown this week? A lot of talking points. Oh, a lot of talking, I felt. Do you know what? I can't remember if I liked SmackDown this week or not. I think it was okay. I don't remember being crazy about it. I don't remember being down on it either. If I was to try and go back into my memory, which I know is crazy because it was only 48 hours ago. But honestly, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. What we're doing, like a big UFC stream yesterday, and I've been doing loads of work today, making loads of notes and planning videos and everything. Feels like an eternity ago. It feels like forever ago, SmackDown now, you know. Really does. If I try and go back in my mind, I think I gave it like a 6.75. So let me have a reminder, actually. I need to have a look. It's bad, man. My memory's atrocious sometimes. SmackDown, Logan and Rey face off. We heard from Paul Heyman, and we had Montez against Santos. We heard from John Cena. We had Logan and Rey. We had Grayson and Austin against Dragon Lee and Cameron Grimes. We had Kathy Kelly sitting down with Kevin Owens. We had Io against Charlotte. Yeah, I seem to remember it being like a 6.75. It was a show that didn't feel necessarily essential viewing. But equally, I didn't think that it was a show that was terrible. I didn't feel like I was wasting my time. I think that definitely felt the absence of like Roman again. I do think that when Roman's not around, it does definitely feel like something big is missing. Like, it's a great opportunity for people to step up, but just sort of feels like no one necessarily does. Just sort of feels like no one really does step up. And we've kind of brought in John Cena to kind of fill that star power void of Roman not being around. And yeah, I mean, it's been all right. It's been nice to see John back, but you know that it's only short term. So you know that he's not going to be going after titles or doing anything of real substance. It's just, you know, one-off appearances really every week. So yeah, it was okay. I think I gave it a 6.75. Fine. But I've seen much better this year, actually, let alone like ever. But it was all right. So a lot of talking, you said. Yeah, there was a lot of talking. In fact, it's funny you should say that, because I remember towards the end of that show saying, have we seen much wrestling this on this episode? And we were kind of talking about the fact that there hadn't been loads, and even some of the matches we had been quite short. So yeah, I don't disagree, but I hope you are well. Let's try and get into the chat. So Jim said, I think the two biggest wrestling stories are NWA getting a deal with the CW network and Impact going back to being called TNA Wrestling. So my understanding about the NWA situation is that the CW network is not as big as it once was. I was actually listening to a podcast where they were looking at like the ratings for some of the shows on there, and the ratings are not that strong. But either way, I mean, I don't know how many homes that gets into. Either way, it's a step in the right direction, isn't it? You know, it's not bad news. It's good news. It's just hard to gauge how big the news is. So it would feel to me like it's a positive step in the right direction, and certainly something that they can build upon. But it's hard to know like how game changing it's going to be. Let's put it that way. But I really like NWA, and I'd love to see them succeed. I have also heard they're looking at bringing back like the territories. This was a big announcement. So EC3 has got his own wrestling promotion. And apparently they're going to use that as one territory. And they're going to look at other promotions. And they're going to try and have the NWA again. Now, I really don't know how this is going to work, because you're going to need several promotions. And you're going to need those promotions to then not kind of... Well, the other thing as well is that if ever you get any good talent, they're going to leave those promotions and they're going to go to AEW and they're going to go to WWE. So you're going to be building stars, definitely. But if they get anywhere near kind of ready to move on, or if they start catching fire, they'll be gone. Unless you can get people that are a little bit washed up or not fancied, like a Tessa Blanchard, or I'm not sure. I don't know who you're going to have in that system. I mean, I suppose going back to the Power Days, we had, Nick Aldis. But, going back to the Power Days, that was before AEW. When I think back to NWA Power, it was fantastic, but you had Ricky Starks, you had Thunder Rosa, you had Eli Drake, who's now LA Knight. You had Nick Aldis, who's now on WWE TV. So you're not going to have a show of that with that kind of star power now, unless you get, I don't know, the WWE releases that Impact and AEW didn't pick up. Maybe there is enough to go around, but it's going to be really interesting to see what that actually looks like. What talent, what's the talent that's in there? I'm sure there'll be great talent, undoubtedly, because those territories, those indies, that's where AEW get a lot of their talent from. And I think Impact pick up people from there as well. WWE, not so much, but they might start to again. They did used to, but then they started going to like that next in line, kind of the athletes that they then train into wrestlers, turn into wrestlers. They started doing that instead. So I sort of feel like the NWA news, them going onto TV, yeah, step in the right direction, but I don't know how big that actually is. In regards to the territory thing, I'm excited by it. Definitely excited by it, and I'm definitely intrigued to see how it's going to look like, but it ain't going to be like the territories of the past. You know, the territories of the past, that was where you had all the biggest names from those areas, and all right, some of them ended up going to WWE, but a good chunk of them didn't. Whereas now, you know, Impact is going to be bigger than this system. TNA is going to be bigger than this system. New Japan is going to be bigger than this system. WWE certainly are bigger than this system. And so what are you left with then? What's actually out there? Maybe there's some really good talent out there. I mean, I am aware of some really good indie talent that's available. So, you know, maybe it would work, but yeah, I want to see it. I can't quite get a gauge at the moment. So I suppose in a way like MJF, but he came through MLW, and I don't know that MLW is going to be a part of this. If they are, that would be a massive get. That would be huge. If they could get like MLW, and they could get like, is it Mission Pro Wrestling? And then EC3's company. And they're looking international as well. So again, if they could pick up some of those international companies, maybe like WXW in Germany, and a few of those like indies that are quite well established. Maybe Beyond Wrestling as well, who I believe are in the Boston area because Triple T goes there. So that would be quite interesting. I am quite excited by that news. And then in regards to the TNA thing, I don't know. I'm the wrong person for that. I mean, for me personally, the TNA name is cringe. It's something which I associate with bad wrestling. It's something I associate with because, as I said, I'm the wrong person for this because for me, I never watched it, but it had a reputation, and I think part of the reason why they left TNA in the past, that name in the past, was because of that reputation. And so they changed it to Impact. So it was a fresh start and they could do, you know, fresh beginnings. And so for them to now say that they're going to go back to TNA is sort of crazy to me, because to me, that doesn't symbolize great memories and great moments and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure it does for many of you that did watch it. But to me, it symbolizes like really bad, cringe, like just awful matches. Jeff Hardy being completely off his head. You know, just Queen Shamel match, the Dudley Boys in that electrified fence where they were having to pretend being shocked. There was so much stuff, you know, like the invasion of like all the old talent that was like washed up as well, and it was all just a bit awkward. I mean, TNA, I think Dixie Carter as well. So for me, that's not something that I necessarily celebrate the return of, but I'm not the audience that they're trying to capture because I never watched it anyway. So you know, for me, I might associate with that, but there's probably a lot of people out there that watched it, enjoyed it, have great memories of it. But I would just question those people that watched it when it was TNA and enjoyed it. Are those people not now watching Impact? Like, I would imagine those people are still watching, aren't they? Is there like a load of lapsed fans, TNA fans that left, that they're trying to bring back? Because if you're trying to attract new viewers, going back to that TNA name, I don't know that that's the right way forward, to be honest. I don't know that it's the right way forward because for me, I always associate it with, you know, just really bad moments. As I said, I am aware of some good things that went on there, you know. I've heard a lot of praise for the X Division throughout my time watching wrestling, you know. I've heard a lot of praise for certain matches. Obviously, we know AJ Styles came out there. Samoa Joe is associated with there. So I've no doubt there was good stuff. This isn't me throwing shade on TNA or Impact. This is just me being honest, because Jim's right. It is one of the biggest stories of the day that they're going back to that name. But I think it's right to just question, is that the right thing to do? Is that the right step for them to take? If they want to shake it up and like really go with something to grab attention, like they could have gone with a completely different name. Is going back to TNA that does have all those cringe bad moments associated with it, is that the right thing? Because who are you trying to attract? Are you trying to attract those fans that are lapsed TNA fans? Because I don't know how many of them there are. And surely they're watching Impact anyway. So, I don't know. We'll see, won't we? My guess is it probably won't make a big difference, is my guess. But, maybe there is a clamor for it. I would imagine the people that are excited are the ones that are watching Impact anyway. If you don't watch Impact, I would question how much it really has resonated with you. Or even if you've heard the news, to be honest. I hadn't heard it until about an hour ago. Because I thought, I'll check and see what's happening. And I saw the video that they did. I thought the video was pretty fun. They kind of got a chest out of the water and then, like, opened it. And there was, like, I think a video package inside it. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, it didn't really make much sense. But I watched it and I was like, well, it was all right. It's kind of all right. Although, can I just say, there was one moment in that video package where they said something like, wrestling needs saving, and I know just what can do it. We need to go back to being TNA or something like this. And I was like, no, if wrestling needs saving, that's not what we need to do. If the answer to saving wrestling is go back to the initials TNA, just let wrestling die. That's what I would say. Because as I said, for me, I associate it with a lot of negative things. But then, as I keep saying it, because I fully understand there'll be some Impact fans that are getting upset. I didn't watch Impact. I didn't watch TNA. If you're telling me it was brilliant and there was more good than bad, that's brilliant. I hope it works out. But that was my reaction. As I think it's interesting because as a non-Impact, non-TNA watcher, that was my genuine reaction. And if that's my genuine reaction, I've got to think it's other people's genuine reaction as well. So that's my thoughts on those two stories. Dark Knight said, I always imagined a Call of Duty GTA FIFA game. The player goes to war, comes back home and struggles to fit into society. It's a bit deep, Dark Knight. Talking like Vietnam kind of game where people go off and they come back and you weren't there, man. You weren't there, man. Danny said, I sometimes watch Impact, but I think when they change back to TNA, I'll watch to see if it is any good. Mr. Dell Jr. said WWE needs to go back to TV 14. Does it? Does it? I would make the argument that it doesn't, because what are you going to get? I mean, I don't think we live in a society where having scantily clad women is... I mean, I don't think that's not really where we are as a society so much now, you know. Back then, having Jerry Lawler scream puppies and not really having proper women's wrestling, that was kind of the time, wasn't it? But it's not really where we are now. And so I don't know that you'd want to kind of go down that road. And then, like, swearing, I mean, do we need it? Is that going to make a big difference? Like, if you can, like, swear? Again, I don't see that as being something that's going to unlock, like, the next kind of wave of, I don't know, profitability. I mean, to be honest, certainly not, because advertisers in this day and age don't want that stuff. Advertisers in this day and age want to reach the widest demographic possible. So if you're only catering to an older audience, that a lot of advertisers might not want to be associated with that kind of smut and that kind of language and loads of blood. You know, if you're a pizza company or whatever, or you sell clothes or whatever it might be, cereal, you just might not want to be associated with any of that. So you are drastically limiting the advertisers that you can work with and the sponsors that you can get. And so that's obviously going to be an impact to business. So from a financial point of view, I don't know that it really makes a great deal of sense. And equally, from a point of view of what are you really gaining? Swear words, bloods, and a bit of nudity. I mean, that's not going to make better stories. Look at the Bloodline story. Bloodline story has been absolutely fantastic, and that has been in a PG environment. There is no reason why you can't tell great stories in a PG setting. No reason whatsoever. Sometimes this gets a bit confused and mixed up. Like the idea that because we're PG, we have to do silly, stupid kid stories isn't true. Like, you can still do really clever psychological stories with, like, look at this again, Bloodline, you know, the little looks at each other, the depth in character. Absolutely brilliant. The reason that you have PG, it just means you can't go as far with bad language or nudity or violence. Like, you just can't go, like, to certain lengths that you could if you moved away from PG, but I don't know that it makes it a better product if you was to do that, to be honest. Don't know. It's one that could be debated in the chat. Would you go to TV 14? Would you stay PG? I mean, to be honest, what I would do is, you know, let Triple H cook, man. Let him cook. Let him cook. Let him do his booking. Give him some more time. I don't think anyone can look at 2023 and say it's been a horrific year. It's been a good year. It's been a decent year. I think people are quite excited with what Triple H is doing, and he's doing it all within the confines of a PG environment, isn't he? Aaron said, how do you feel about Gunther always defended on Raw over a premium live event? I'm excited for the week ahead. Going to OTT on Saturday, and I hope you are well. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I remember you mentioning about that OTT. Have a great time. I mean, I know you will. It looks like a really fun card. Lots of big names. I remember Moxley was on it as well, because I think we looked and he was coming to Wolverhampton, and I said I felt sorry for him as someone that has lived and worked in Wolverhampton. I don't mind Gunther being used on TV for his matches. I think it's kind of good that we are getting matches on TV for him because it is a workhorse title, and so it is nice to see it being defended on TV. My big frustration, though, would be probably the same as everyone else. The commercials really interrupt the flow of the match. So I don't mind him being on TV, and I don't mind him defending that belt on a fairly consistent basis. I think it should be because it's the IC belt, and I also think it should be because it's Gunther, and you know, he's all about the mat being sacred and upholding the tradition of wrestling and all of that stuff. So for me, it makes sense that he would do all of these things. But my frustration would be the banging, iconic, legendary matches are more likely to occur at a pay-per-view. Because you're not going to want to have, or you're not going to have commercial interruptions. So they can just go, man. They can just go. And as we saw at WrestleMania, you know, absolutely maybe the best triple threat match I've ever seen, which, fantastic, incredible. And then you think back to Clash at the Castle with Sheamus. Again, incredible, fantastic. There's been some really, really incredible Gunther matches. Some of them have been on... right, hopefully that fixes it. Nice. Yeah, if ever we do get a little wobble, we've got a couple of routers we can go to. So, yeah, the point I was making there is I don't mind it. I like to see him defending that title. But premium live events need to make up a good chunk of it as well, rather than it just being Raw. But I don't think he's going to have it long. I keep saying this, but I really don't. I mean, I'm surprised he's still got it. Because for me, if I was booking, he would have lost it by now. Because I would be thinking about in, I don't know, 5 years' time, 6 years' time, 10 years' time, I may want someone to break this record. And, you know, I don't want to make it hard for myself. So get the title. Now the record's broke, get the belt off him. I don't care if it's not ready or time for him to go. Like, we can always find stuff for him to do. We can always find a feud for him to do. But all we're doing is we're making it harder to break this record further down the road. So I am shocked that we're still going with this thing. It does feel like Chad is going to be the one that's going to beat it. So I don't know quite when that's going to show itself again, or when we're going to quite get back to that. But it can't be long. It surely can't be long. Maybe Survivor Series is where it finally ends. I don't know they would end it in Crown Jewel, but I suppose they could. Saudis are paying a lot of money, aren't they? But either way, it can't be long. But Christopher said, I'm just popping in to say hi. I'm not going to stay too long. I'm up early tomorrow. I will see you all for Raw and enjoy the rest of the stream. Christopher, shout out to you. Bonkers said, Chad versus Gunther was good. Mr. Dow Jr. said, the Bloodline story is the best storyline in the past 5 years. Tell me what's better than the Bloodline story in the past 5 years. Well, I mean, you are dealing with a pandemic, which does make things a little bit more complicated. You could also point towards the rise of Becky Lynch. I think that was quite significant, with her becoming the man and going on to main event WrestleMania. And the story of her and Ronda coming in, and Charlotte, and the build towards that WrestleMania. I mean, that certainly felt big. I think if we're talking 5 years, we're talking WrestleMania 35. So I would say Kofi Mania. And I would say the emotion of Kofi. And, you know, I don't know where people stand on WWE and former black champions, because it seems to be a bit of a debate as to whether The Rock is or isn't, and what qualifies as that. So I don't know, to be honest, if you want to class The Rock as the first black champion, or if you want to say that Kofi was the first black champion. But either way, that is still a very significant moment, with MVP and tears, and the emotion at that time as well. So that felt like a big moment as well. So, and then of course, as we said, I mean, that I think is around what, 2019, actually, thinking about it, because that was WrestleMania 35, which means the WrestleMania 36 was 2020, wasn't it? So, yeah, Firefly Funhouse, that came in 2019, and the rise of The Fiend. I mean, for me, The Fiend sort of lost his way. I will agree with that. But I think that the Firefly Funhouse and The Fiend and all of that was good, really good. That he had that alter ego. And I think a lot of people got enjoyment out of that. So, I don't know, man. I mean, we can kind of dig into it. I'm sure we can find plenty of stories, even during that kind of pandemic time, that we could highlight. But just because... if in your opinion there hasn't been loads of great stories, my counter argument, even though I think there have been perfectly acceptable number of good stories, my counter argument would be that it's not the TV rating that's the problem. It's the creative team that's the problem. The confines, the restrictions are not the reason why you're not getting the stories that you can say are as good as the Bloodline. It's the fact that the creative team, and maybe you want to blame Vince as well, many do, and his last minute changes, but the creative team is the reason as to why you're not getting more Bloodline stories. But those stories that I've mentioned, the Bloodline story that I've mentioned, other stories that we could mention, like it shows that you can still do it within the confines of a PG restriction. So that's why for me, it's, I'm just not... the Attitude Era had some great moments, but I keep saying it's not my favorite era. So, like, I think back to, like, the Golden Era and some of the stuff that was happening then. I mean, there was so many great stories that were happening at that point, and that was, I believe, a PG product. I don't believe that was TV-14 either. It was all rock and wrestling and, cartoony and family friendly and kids in the crowds. So I believe all of that phase was PG. You know, it's a misconception that WWE was like always hardcore and TV-14 and then turned like, you know, PG. Because if you go back to the 80s and you think about Hulkamania, and you think about, like, you know, the products that were coming out there, we weren't getting nudity, loads of nudity. I mean, it was shocking when Miss Elizabeth had her skirt whipped off at SummerSlam. I mean, I think we all nearly fainted at seeing some legs, you know, in the 1980s. Couldn't cope. Didn't know where to look. You know, sensational Sherry coming down and showing a little bit of cleavage. Oh, didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do with myself. So, you know, you can think back to all the stories from that time as well, because that was done within a PG confine. It's only the Attitude Era that was an exception. There's certainly people that pine after that, and certainly going into Ruthless Aggression as well. And there's people that pine after that, but gotta tell you, man, them days are done. I don't see us going back to that. Just because I think there's too much that you would lose from a sponsorship and an advertising point of view. But so... these are the restrictions, the PG restrictions. We can make things work within that, but we just need to be more creative. JB said, to be objective, Bloodline story has been cinema for a handful of segments with Sammy. Before that, it was stale, and since then, it has been stale, says JB. Okay. Well, I would say that it's been a big success. I don't think that people would argue with that. I would say it was a big success before Sammy. If you think back to Jey Uso and all the kind of Jimmy coming back, is he going to be in? Is he not going to be in? All of that kind of drama. You know, we had all of that before we had the Sammy stuff. And the Bloodline story was a success before Sammy joined. I mean, I don't disagree. I think Sammy took it to a different level. I absolutely don't disagree. I love Sammy being in the Bloodline. But I think Bloodline was a successful story before Sammy joined it. And I wouldn't disagree that we've kind of run on the fumes of Sammy leaving. Sammy left and he was still sort of involved around WrestleMania, of course, because it was Kevin and Sammy against the Usos. And the Usos obviously were part of the Bloodline. So we kind of did that up until WrestleMania. To be honest, after that, we still continued with Sammy being involved because we did Roman and Solo going up against Sammy and Kevin. And I think that was, I want to say Saudi Arabia. Was that Night of Champions? So, you know, that's going back a few months. So, I don't know, man. I mean, to be honest, I don't really know how long we've been out of the Sammy in the Bloodline type of story, you know? I don't disagree, like the past few months, whatever, with Roman's not been around as well. So it's kind of hard to say after Sammy, like what period we're actually dealing with there. I mean, I don't disagree that it's been a little flat recently, but as we said, Roman's not been around. And now that he's back and we're doing him against LA Knight, and we've got kind of Jay on one brand, Jimmy on the other, Solo with a few teases that he might be about to turn on Roman, I kind of feel like there's a few things that are happening here. You know, we're looking at Oos on Oos action. That's pretty exciting. So, but I don't disagree, peaks and troughs, but you're going to get that in a story, aren't you? Going to get that? It's no way that the Bloodline story is going to be like bang up here and just stay up here. Like, you're going to have, like, as the story's being told, moments where you're really engaged, and then you'll have moments where you're kind of less engaged. But if we look at the Bloodline story as a whole, I think you're going to be hard pushed to find someone that doesn't say it's one of the most impactful, one of the most successful stories that WWE have ever told. Right, let's get to this super chat. Matthew said, do you think Gunther will get to WrestleMania as IC champ? No. Or do we need to shuffle it up a little before the Rumble? Do we need 2 unbeatable champs? No, it goes back but to what I just said about how I think we need to get the belt off him soon, because this record just keeps going and going and going. And I know that there's a lot of people that aren't really bothered about that. They're not like thinking along those terms. But as someone that tries to think about, if I was in creative, what would I do? You know, that would be really at the forefront of my mind. It really would, because we're seeing how hard it is for Roman to like beat records. I mean, he's had to have this belt so long to beat like some of the records, and he's still nowhere near the Bruno 7-year one, right? There won't be a woman that's ever going to be able to beat Fabulous Moolah's like 25-year records, right? So again, you know, there's records out there that are really hard to beat, really frustrating. You wish they weren't as long. You wish that Bruno one wasn't 7 years. Could you imagine if Roman was about to become the longest reigning WWE champion ever in the history of ever, and just how big that would be? But I mean, he's at it for what, 3 years? He needs to go another 4 years if he wants to achieve that, because of Bruno and the record that he set like all the way back in the 60s. And then of course you've got the Fabulous Moolah, 25 years. I mean, it's that's a difficult one because it started out life as an NWA Women's Championship and then became the WWF Women's Championship because they used to be a part of the NWA, and so they did recognize that title. And then she brought it over as an exclusive belt to them. So it's not really lying, even though she did get beat for that title many times, which are just not recognized. But overlooking that, it's not really lying, but it's still really frustrating. Really frustrating. Because it does definitely feel like many people should be benefiting by being the longest reigning women's champion of all time. So we've still got the option to do that with the IC title. And it's not that long, to be honest. It's only 400 odd days. So it's not that hard to break this record. But why keep extending it? It's done. He's got it. He's the guy. He's got it. Is not getting any bigger as a result now. So for me, yeah, I WrestleMania, no, I mean that just feels it's months and months and months away. So I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's a few people thinking that he's going to win the Rumble and then he'll go after the world title at WrestleMania. And to be honest, that's the kind of timeline I'm looking at as well. Have him lose the title at Crown Jewel or Survivor Series. I would have had it off him by now, but they haven't. So lose it at Crown Jewel, lose it at Survivor Series. I'd say definitely lose it this year. And then have him go into the Rumble, win the Rumble, and then go to WrestleMania where he competes for the title, the world title. So, yeah, no, for me personally, I wouldn't have him going into WrestleMania as the Intercontinental Champion. I tell you what, though, be very interesting to see what we do with that title, because if Chad is going to be the one, how do you then get behind Chad? How do you really build Chad up? Because that will be huge. That will be game-changing for him. To be the one that has finally beaten Gunther, you can't minimize that. You can't afford to minimize that. Like, he needs to be pushed hard. He needs to be given great matches, great opportunities, pay-per-view matches. He needs to be allowed to show what he can do and shine. You know, if he's got it in him for 5-star matches, let him show that. I mean, he is an excellent wrestler, and I'm sure he could do 5-star matches, but we just have never really been given the opportunity to see it outside of when he was in American Alpha. So for him to have like a run with that belt, if it is going to be Chad's, very exciting. Very, very exciting. I'm excited to see what he's going to do with that title, if it's going to be him. But I just hope that we don't get it off him quickly or something, you know? Because for me, whoever beats Gunther is going to be legit, and they're going to be seen as legit, and so we've got to invest in them. So I'll be very interested to see what happens with Chad, and if Chad's champion by the time we get to WrestleMania, if he is the one, of course. So Matthew, shout out to you. It's a really good question, dude. I really like that. Let's try and get back to the chat. I want to try and get down as many as possible. Hayden said, no one will be beating the Fabulous Moolah's 25-year record, to be honest. Fabulous Moolah will always be the greatest women's champion of all time. Get rid of Roman. Give it to LA Knight. At least he shows up. Roman is on TV maybe one time every 3 months, says Ray. A. Jobson said, do you think Randy will return at Survivor Series and dethrone Roman? No. I think he could return at Survivor Series, but I don't expect him to beat Roman. I mean, Randy, I think, is going to come back, and I don't think he's going to have long. If he does come back, I think this could be the final run. I'm not expecting him to come back and have years and years and years. I mean, to be honest, him coming back at all is going to be a huge. I'm not surprised. I won't be surprised if when he comes back, we start to hear how horrific it's been for him, and how I think people will then start to realize how close he was to retirement, and how at times it didn't look like he was going to come back, and all of this. Like, I expect all of that to come when he returns, and as a result, I wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be the start of his final run, you know. So for him to have that title, I don't think we're going to do that. I think that it'll be a case that we'll do some feuds. I think if he's going to have any kind of a title, it might be a tag belt. Maybe they put the other one on him, the world title, but I don't see that. To be honest, I don't even know if he's going to be capable of having like good full-on singles matches, or if we're going to need to put him in a tag team for a while. If Riddle was still around, for me, it'd be a no-brainer that RK Bro would be getting back together. Absolute no-brainer. But he's not, so I don't know what it is that we do, to be honest. But I expect him to be with people. I don't expect him to be on his own. I wouldn't expect him to be a champion. Certainly not with that belt, because that's too much to put on his shoulders. For someone that's been out of wrestling since last May, and someone who it's rumored doctors said you're done, right? For him to come back and then be given that belt with and all the responsibility that comes with that, and the half an hour long main event matches that you have to have, and all the commitments that a champion has to have, like, I just don't think that's where Randy is, to be honest. So no, I don't expect him to dethrone Roman. James said, I'm still in shock that TNA is back. Jim said it also doesn't help that Moolah had an iron grip on the women's division, so much that she sabotaged the WWF Ladies Tag Team Championships, which were supposed to be defended at WrestleMania 3. Definitely want to look into that, because I've never heard that story, that she sabotaged the women's tag titles. I'm making a note of that, Jim. Moolah, WrestleMania 3, ladies tag titles. Now, we know that the women's tag titles were around in the 80s. We've spoke about that quite a few times. I think it's on a really early video, actually, that I did on the channel. But I love. I think I could make an argument for the Jumping Bomb Angels being some of the most overlooked WWF talent in the history of the company. Like, what they were doing in the late 80s in WWF is just, it was so before its time. It was so ahead of what you were seeing on the rest of the card. They were, I suppose in a way, it was like what Owen Hart was doing. Owen Hart, they were like two female Owen Harts. I love the Jumping Bomb Angels. So yeah, they, and obviously the Glamour Girls had the titles. But I didn't hear of a story of Moolah preventing them being defended at WrestleMania 3. I will definitely enjoy having a read about that. So shout out to you, Jim. Appreciate the knowledge. Dork Knight said, is the name change a big deal, James? Does it mean a lot to the fans? Did people still watch because of the name change? Will people come back? So what we were asking earlier. Can't wait for Survivor Series. So hype and happy. Yeah, let's go. Moin Malik, shout out to you. Ashley said, at least Gunther is a fighting champion, unlike Roman. needs to get the belt off Roman, need to have someone that will defend it more than 3 times a year. Architect said Gunther, Brock at WrestleMania. Kieran said, did you see WWE extending John Cena's contract for Survivor Series? No, I didn't. Is that an announcement, is it? Is that a question of will they or have they? Because I haven't seen an announcement on that. If they have, brilliant. Great news. Obviously, the strike is over now, so don't know when he's going to be leaving us, but I would imagine it'll be soon. But then saying that, Survivor Series is only a month away, so maybe they can just get it there, you know. Ronnie said, Daze, I love Nick Aldis kicking out Adam Pearce. We don't need Raw problems on SmackDown. Respect Nick Aldis. Love him. Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. There was a Bryan Danielson in a Liverpool channel stream before. They ignored my AEW gag. Must be their real name. Justin said, how does Cody go for Roman if Gunther wins the Rumble? So we've kind of touched on this a few times. You've got Elimination Chamber. I mean, look, first of all, you've got the fact that if Roman was to rock up on SmackDown and get in Roman's face, like we've seen it before. I mean, don't forget, Logan got a title match because of saying a few words on a flipping podcast, right? So if Cody was to go onto Logan's podcast and say a few words about Roman, it could easily put Roman's nose out of joint and Roman could start calling for Cody. So it really ain't going to be that hard because you really don't need much of an excuse to actually get there. We know that there's a few other ways that you can do it. One of them being Elimination Chamber. It might be a bit tricky to get Cody into it, but as I said, it's really not going to be that difficult to get him in there. And certainly with him like needing to finish the story, because there are rumors that Rock is not going to be the one for Roman at WrestleMania 40. Now, I don't know how reliable that is, because the point has been made, and it is an excellent point, that if they did have Rock lined up and they didn't want people to know yet, then they surely would be putting out fake stories. So there is a chance that Cody isn't going to be Roman's opponent at WrestleMania. But I think there's also a good chance that he is, because the latest reports are that The Rock isn't going to be facing Roman. And so if it isn't going to be The Rock, it has to be Cody. And as I said, I don't think it'll be too difficult. You could even have Roman calling out Cody, or you could have an Elimination Chamber where the winner of that goes on to face Roman Reigns. So it doesn't have to just be the Royal Rumble. The Rumble could just decide as to who faces, well, currently Seth. And so Gunther wins that. He then goes on to face Seth. And then, of course, we have to figure out who's going to face Roman. And it will be interesting to see how they go about doing that. But there'll be a few ways forward. Let's go down. To the person who said, name a better story than The Bloodline, Mae Young giving birth to a hand was 1,000,000 times better than The Bloodline. Do you have any impressions on Jakara Jackson? I think she's good for a rookie. We haven't seen much of her, to be honest, so it's hard to get a read. I mean, I honestly don't know the last time I saw her in ring. I mean, I think that she is very confident. I would say, though, that I've seen a lot more of Kalani Jordan, who I really like the look of. I think that she's injured as well now, isn't she? She was meant to be in the breakout tournament and she got replaced. So, yeah, I don't know. We need to see more of her. I like Metaphor. I think they're a good group. I think that she, when she talks, she seems to talk quite confidently, but she's just coming in with a few lines. So it's not the most challenging of work. If she was like standing out there on her own, then we'd get a much better read. Honestly, I think I've probably seen her compete in the ring twice. I mean, I really can't remember many matches that she's had. So Yeah, it feels like it's very, very early in her development. Very early. But I would say someone like Kalani Jordan, who is I've seen a lot more of. It feels like she might be a little further along, actually, because she's just out there on her own now. I mean, she was with Dana Brooke, but at least she was getting some matches. So, yeah, I don't mind her. I think she's good. I think she's got potential, but we'll get a much better read of her as we continue to move forward. JB said, how would you envision a Cody Rhodes title reign being booked if he beats Roman at WrestleMania 40? Would it be any good? What would Roman do after? Well, Roman would go away for a while, I'm sure, but him and Solo, I don't see that feud being this side of WrestleMania. So I think what you do is you tease a complete breakdown of the bloodline. I mean, it's spluttering as it is. You know, people have pointed out earlier that they're not feeling it so much now. But the point I made was that, well, Roman hasn't been around. Now that he's seemingly back, we could hopefully get back to telling some good, juicy stories again. And I would have it where there's dissension, there's looks, there's, you know, little conversations going on behind people's backs. We know that Jimmy is just a wild man now, seemingly doing whatever he thinks is the right thing to do. And we know that Solo has had a few dirty looks at Roman as well. We know that Jay's out and Sammy, of course, long gone. So I think what I would be looking at is really building up the tension, the dissension. It's actually, don't forget, it was this time last year we were doing that with Sammy as well. Because it was Sammy and Roman that lost to Kevin and John Cena on the New Year's Eve edition of Smackdown. And that was a big turning point in their relationship. And then in January, we got the trial of Sammy. And obviously by Royal Rumble, that's where it did all fall apart. So I would sort of follow a similar path, but I wouldn't actually have anything splitting until, say, WrestleMania. I mean, I'd just have it as this big explosion, Cody getting the belt, Bloodline falling apart, Roman going away for a while. And then when he comes back, really, he's coming after a few people. And top of that list has got to be Solo Sikoa. So I think Solo Roman matches would be, incredible. In regards to Cody, I would think that his title reign would be okay. My concern with Cody, and it's not really just Cody, but a lot of people are desperate for people to get a championship. Yeah, I'm desperate for Sammy to get a championship. I want him to be a world champion. But when he actually gets there, have you got the stories ready to tell? Because I think sometimes so much goes into getting people to a title that when they're actually there, the same level of work is not put into their feuds. I think about Daniel Bryan, and they worked so hard to get him to the title. As soon as he got the title at WrestleMania 30, I think I'm right in saying his first feud was Kane, which makes a lot of sense when you think about Team Hell No. But it wasn't that great. The feud wasn't brilliant. And, it wasn't really too long then before he was getting injured. And that was it, and Seth's kind of run at the moment hasn't been, it's been okay. I think Nakamura came out of it looking quite good. But, you hear a few rumblings about, Seth, and people seem quite split on it. You're even hearing about how, Roman, we need to get the belt off him. He doesn't defend it enough. So I sort of feel like when you actually get to the title, it's really hard in this day and age to make that kind of title run meaningful and people appreciate it. I suppose Gunther's got to have done as good a job as anyone I can remember in recent times with having a title and people are respecting it. So I suppose for Cody, the key is going to have to defend it regular. There's going to need to be some really good stories that get told, really good opponents that are ready, because that's another thing as well. There's no point putting the belt on Cody and then going, right, who have we got for him to feud with? And you're looking around, you're like, well, we could do that, I suppose, or we could do... No, it's got to be prepared. It's got to be ready. I mean, I've got to think they've got an idea now as to what WrestleMania 40 looks like. I would think by now they've got a rough idea of WrestleMania 40, right? Because really, by the time you get to January, you're starting the builds, aren't you? Royal Rumble, you're going to use that to put pieces in place. So if you ain't got an idea now of what WrestleMania is going to look like, you need to be quick because we're almost into November. And by the time you get to January, we're on our way, baby. So you need to know. So I think if they've got a rough idea of what that is, hopefully they can start cementing that, and then they can start building it afterwards. So he needs. I mean, I can't really give you names because it's just going to be the big heels in it. Whoever the big heels are on Raw at that time, those are going to be the people he's going to feud with. So I would keep probably SmackDown, sorry, because he'll be over on SmackDown if he's got Romans. So whoever the big heels are, I love the idea though, and hopefully this is why they've moved him over there, but I love the idea of a heel Kevin. So maybe that could be the first feuds. So maybe, Kevin bitter at the fact that he had a couple of attempts and he was denied because the bloodline stopped him. And now Cody has successfully won the title. But guess what? You might have won it, Cody. And yeah, all right, you might be the one that finally beat Roman, but you didn't have to put up with the bloodline like I did. Not that second time. And every time that Kevin has gone for that title, he's had bloodline involved. And as I just said earlier, WrestleMania 40 for me, that's where Cody gets the belt and it's where bloodline finally explodes. So Cody will have an opportunity, hopefully, to get the 1, 2, 3 without having that, bloodline interference. That is going to be where Cody finally wins the title, finishes that story. Roman loses the belt. He goes away. He can come back and feud with Solo. You've got Kevin, who's just moved over to SmackDown. Kevin can be the first feud for Cody. Kevin can be upset that he had opportunities but had to deal with the bloodline. Cody didn't have to deal with the bloodline the second time. And then you've got like a motive and everything. And then just think of the matches, man. Cody against Kevin. Think about how incredible those matches would be. So, I would definitely look to go into that as like the first feud, because I think over like May, June, maybe even the summer, I mean, that could just be awesome. And then, again, who's going to be on at that point? I don't know when we're going to do a draft. And I don't know who's going to be on the brand at that point. So it makes it a bit tricky. But just look at the big heels that are on SmackDown. Those would be the names that he'd be feuding with. But have those stories ready. And actually, I think Triple H is really good at that, because don't forget, when Cody didn't win at WrestleMania earlier this year, Triple H said, we know where we're going. We know what's coming next. It's all planned. So I think he's really good at having, the next steps ready. And again, this is another reason why people got upset about LA Knight not getting opportunity. People were chanting for LA Knight and seemingly he wasn't getting used. And the point we were making on the watch-alongs was, well, Triple H seems to be booking in like 3-month blocks. So it's just a case of, yeah, you want him right now, but you might have to wait until after SummerSlam, because he seems to be like Q1 build towards WrestleMania. Q2 is going to be, build towards SummerSlam. Q3 is going to be taking us like kind of heading towards Survivor Series-ish. And then end of the year, whatever. So the problem was that he was just kind of getting over, and he'd been over for a little bit, but he wasn't quite in the plans, and we needed to get through that period, and we did, and now boom, look how he's being used. I mean, it's night and day. He's gone from not really being able to get onto pay-per-views to then getting onto pay-per-views but not really being used much, to now he's going up against Roman. So, they do listen, but it's just, it takes a little bit of time because they book in blocks. So I've got confidence that whatever goes down at WrestleMania, they will have the next months that follow all mapped out. They'll have an idea where we're going. So yeah, Jay, shout out to you. I'm looking forward to seeing kind of if it does go that way. If not, brilliant. Let's see what they've got for us. I think they've got a few options that they can explore. So, yeah, it's exciting. Bishop said, quick question. What are your thoughts on the return of TNA? We touched on it earlier, buds. We touched on it earlier. I mean, snapshot is, I think if you watch Impact, it's quite exciting news. I think if you don't watch Impact, I don't know what it means, because for me, I associate TNA with a lot of negative, bad things. My understanding was this is why they moved away from that name and they went to the Impact name, because TNA is, you know, it's the Dudley Boys being electrocuted. It's Jeff Hardy at Victory Road. It's, you know, it's just these negative, like Shamel match kind of, that's what I associate with it, because unfortunately TNA had a bad reputation, had a good reputation, I think, with those that watched it, as I said earlier. I think it had a good reputation, and I think people, it's a bit like WWE, isn't it? You know, if you don't watch WWE, you might just see a lot of the cringe stuff, and you might, you know, that might be your impression of it. But TNA was always kind of joked about. It was always kind of like, what the hell are they doing over there? And have you seen this? And, you know, clips of it would do the rounds and whatever. And so my understanding was that they moved to Impact, kind of distanced themselves from that to have a fresh start. So now that they're going back to it, just sort of, I don't know, it's a strange one for me, because I've never watched it. I've never been into TNA or Impact. It's never been really on my radar. I've watched it a couple of times. We've done watch-alongs for certain shows, but only a couple of times. And so for me, it's just a bit strange, because, as I said, for me, it's got quite negative connections. But listen, they feel this is the right way to go, and so we'll see. We'll see. I would imagine, as I said, it's exciting people that watch it, because if you watch Impact, my guess is you probably watched TNA before. But I don't know what it's going to do for casuals, because there could be a lot of people that still connect it with the more negative aspects of things, you know. We'll see. We'll see how it works out for them. Anna says, I gotta say hi from Rhode Island. Anna, hello. Sean, hello. Daniel said TNA is back. James said they moved from TNA to Impact because Hogan hated the TNA name. Okay. Jim said it only gained a bad rep under Dixie Carter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she definitely is someone that I associate with the bad aspects of TNA. And again, I said this earlier because I know there's a good chunk of people that join us that watch Impact and TNA. This is no shades. I have no reason to have issue with TNA or Impact. Like, I've been very honest in saying I don't watch it. And so when I'm answering these questions, I'm just giving you my honest answer, right? And my honest answer is that I saw a lot of the negative stuff. I heard a lot about the negative stuff. You know, like if you maybe don't watch AEW, I think if you are on social media, you're going to hear a lot of the negative stuff about AEW, because there's, you know, a lot of WWE fans that are quite willing to spread that negative stuff around. I'm sure you've seen the pictures of Edge in the ring and a load of empty seats. I'm sure you've seen like the AEW botches accounts. I'm sure you've heard clips from Jim Cornette, right? And if you don't watch AEW, I'm sure you've been exposed to some of those things. Well, that was the same back in the day, because really TNA was the only kind of competition that WWE had. And so that kind of rivalry that we're seeing now between WWE and AEW, and certainly between the fans, it was sort of similar back in the day as well between WWE and TNA. And so you would have a lot of WWE fans that would make sure that the more negative aspects of TNA would be highlighted. And if you didn't watch the show to kind of counter that, I don't know that the TNA platform and the TNA fan base could kind of get the more positive aspects out as loud as the WWE fans could get the negative aspects out. So that's why I associate it, because the negative stuff was just so much more prevalent, visible, easy to find, if you will, than the more positive stuff. So it's, you know, you can say it's unfair, and you can say that it's not a fair reflection and all of that stuff, and that's absolutely fine, because you could be telling the truth. There's someone that didn't watch it. You could absolutely be telling the truth. But yeah, that's my reaction to it, is that the TNA name, I don't know that it's the right thing to do, because it's got those kind of more negative connections for me. But again, let's see. I mean, they might change, and it might have like a massive impact on their viewership. It could be that people get excited about it. You know, nostalgia is a powerful thing, even if at the time it was kind of being ridiculed in some quarters. We know that like nostalgia is a very powerful weapon, if you will, tool. And so they could go back, and it could inspire a load of people to check it out. Could see a massive boost to their ratings. We'll wait and see. Maka says AEW is basically a WWE retirement home, but AEW is okay. It has the old ring announcers and commentators like Jim Ross and Taz. James says, I love the drama. Does anyone remember the TNA game? I do remember a TNA game. I never had it. I remember Kurt being on the front. I mean, that was a good thing. Kurt was good. Kurt being in there, I mean, again, I never watched him, but I'm sure he had a lot of banging matches, so Kurt was obviously a positive. Right, I can see we're like running out of time. Amazingly, we've already been streaming for like an hour and 15 minutes. Mental. We'll probably be around for another 15 minutes or so, but this will give us an opportunity just to talk about NXT, because actually it is Halloween Havoc this week. So obviously NXT has got Halloween Havoc. It's a 2-week event. So we've got Halloween Havoc night 1 on Tuesday, Halloween Havoc night 2 in a week's time. So Lexis King, Brian Pillman Jr., he is going to make his debut. So looking forward to that. Don't know quite what that's going to mean. I don't know that he's having a match, but or if it's a promo. But either way, let's get going. Let's get started, right? He is someone that I thought was okay. I don't remember like loving him or being crazy about him. I'm certainly not going to paint a picture now that I did love him or was crazy about him. It was a bit of a nothing entity to me in AEW. But, you know, they clearly saw potential, and they've been working with him, and they've given him a new name. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what WWE do with him. You know, I think it is interesting to see someone in one company and how they get used, and then see how the other company uses them, and you can compare the two and look at, like, you know, the strengths, the weaknesses, blah 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 blah. So yeah, he is coming in on Tuesday. We got Chase U taking on the family, Stax and Tony. That is for the NXT tag titles. We got Ariana Grace taking on Kalani Jordan. We got Lola Vice against Carmen Petrovic. So these are breakout tournament matches. Maybe not the most exciting of things in the world, but they are semi-finals. So it will set up the final, which I expect to be Kalani Jordan against Lola Vice. Who attacked Trick? Don't know if we get the answer on that, but certainly there should be more developments, because that's too big to ignore. Obviously, a lot of people think that it's Carmelo. I do wonder if there's going to be a swerve. I do wonder if everyone thinks it's Carmelo and then it turns out that it's not, because it might just be a bit too obvious. But yeah, we'll see what comes of that. Jade Cargill was shown on the TV last week, kind of looking at her watch, saying it's time. And so I think she should go to NXT. We've seen the NXT women's title being used on Raw as well as NXT. They could continue that if Jade becomes champion. So I think maybe Becky beating Lyra and then Jade confronting after. would be pretty sick. That would be awesome. And then maybe it sets up Becky Jade at Deadline, because Deadline tends to be like a big NXT show near the end of the year. Actually, I don't know if they've announced. They have announced Deadline, but I don't know if they've said if it's anywhere special. I think it might, sadly, just be in the Performance Center. Deadline 2023, December 9th. This is going to be the last show of the year. There's no other shows. Oh, and actually, we are in Connecticut at the Total Mortgage Arena. We are not in the Performance Center. That's interesting. That's interesting. So we are December 9th, super close to Christmas, last show of the year, like big show of the year. We're in the Total Mortgage Arena in Connecticut. If I just click on that, it has got a capacity of concerts up to 10,000. So basketball 9,000, ice hockey 8,000. It's going to be a decent crowd, certainly a lot bigger than what you would see in the Performance Center. If you do Jade Cargill against Becky Lynch for the women's title on that show, as I said, she can still rock up on Raw. And that will keep her primarily in NXT. So we'll see. Question marks as to whether we see Jade on Tuesday. I think then we've got Blair against Gigi in a lights out match, but I don't know if that's this week or the week after, to be honest. But Blair Davenport against Gigi, lights out match. And then the other thing is Roxanne Perez against Kiana James. That is going to be Falls Count Anywhere, no DQ, Devil's Playground match. Now, we have seen a Devil's Playground match before. There was one recently in 2020 between Johnny Gargano and Damian Priest for the North American Championship. So, Falls Count Anywhere, no DQ, you know, that kind of a thing. So, yeah, Roxanne against Kiana. So, yeah. The other thing as well that I've got written down is Bryan Danielson and Claudio taking on Orange Cassidy and Okada, which I think is this Wednesday. And I think they've also announced that MJF against Juice Robinson is opening the show. So Dynamite on Wednesday. MJF against Juice Robinson certainly sounds good. Okada? I mean, I can't say I'm thrilled about him being in a tag team with Orange Cassidy. But Okada being on Dynamite, I mean, that every time he comes out, though, he tends to come out to crickets. It's not like he comes out and people are throwing babies in the air, right? People. I think there's a good chunk of that crowd that are AEW fans that don't necessarily engage with New Japan, which is crazy. I've said before, if you think about how it started, and you think that Young Bucks, Hangman, Jericho, Cody, Kenny Omega all came from New Japan. I mean, Jericho had been in New Japan. He didn't come straight over from WWE. And Cody was in Bullet Club, was over in New Japan as well. So, you know, when this company started, it was New Japan heavy and the fans had been watching them in New Japan. Looking at some of the reaction these New Japan talent gets, I just get the feeling we've got a whole generation of AEW fans now that didn't watch New Japan or haven't watched New Japan. So I honestly don't know what kind of reaction Okada's going to get, but he has been seen in AEW, Forbidden Door, for example, but we haven't seen him much. So I'm quite excited for that, to be honest. Quite excited to see Okada. I can't say I'm excited by that match, but Okada, Dynamite. So yeah, we've got a few things coming up. They didn't care about Switchblade either, said James. It's true, innit? There was crickets when he got into the ring. Very true. What are your thoughts about WWE commentators right now, says Mr. Dell Jr. I like Wade Barrett a lot. I think he's good. I think that him being in the ring as well gives him, like, think he knows the kind of things to highlight. He's got a good voice for commentary as well. It's got a bit of a gruff kind of tone to it. But yeah, you know, he was good when he was in NWA. Obviously, he spent time in NXT. He's kind of come through the ranks, and I think him and Michael Cole really good together. So I like them. I like Corey Graves. I know that Corey Graves tends to divide opinion a little bit, but I really like Corey Graves. And Kevin Patrick just doesn't do it for me. I think Kevin Patrick, though, is starting to find his feet a little more. If you listen to him on Smackdown, working with Michael Cole, I think you can see that he's turned up the enthusiasm a little bit. I think he's trying to be a bit clearer on some of his points. I think that he is trying to like add more story to the match as well. So rather than just like chipping in and maybe not quite knowing what to say and saying a few things, and sometimes getting a bit too involved in conversations with Corey and not really adding to the match that's in the ring. Now, like, he's starting to blossom a little bit more into being a lead commentator. And you know, that's obviously has been massively helped by having Michael Cole sat next to him and give him direct, immediate feedback. You know, I'd imagine every time they go to commercial break, he's getting, you know, notes coming in from Michael Cole. I think they do really want him to work out. I would say that there has been some improvement there as well. But I don't know that, you know, if you could go and get like a Mauro Ranallo, I know he's got issues, and I know that didn't quite work, but you get my point. If you could go and get someone of that experience who could just come in and just boom. I mean, you know, there's a lot of good commentators out there. Kevin Patrick, I think he could probably benefit from going down to NXT, to be honest. You could do a swap with him and Vic Joseph. Vic Joseph could come up. Kevin Patrick could go down, and I think immediately it would be stronger. But that's the only one that I've necessarily got like a problem with. I really don't mind Corey Graves. And actually, I like Corey and Michael together on pay-per-views. I think they work quite well together. So, I mean, it probably doesn't get to the Jerry Lawler, JR heights that we've enjoyed in the past, or Jesse the Body Venture, or Bobby Heenan, or, you know. We've had some really good commentators in the past. I'd say that this is not quite of that standard, but it feels like there's at least something there to work with, you know? I would like to put a woman in. Do you think we need a female voice? I think they can provide an interesting, different kind of insight. You know, I remember like Beth down in NXT talking about like she was in the women's locker room earlier that day, and this is what the women were saying. This is like, you know, and you can't get that, can you, from Michael Cole or anyone? So I think that you can get like an interesting, different perspective on things. Putting a female voice on, Beth was fantastic when she was on NXT. So I would definitely look to explore that, but I just don't know of any female commentators that are out there, to be honest. So, and I like the 2-man booth. I wouldn't really go back to the 3-man booth. I think we're only doing a 3-man booth on SmackDown because Kevin Patrick's struggling. I think that's it. I think if Kevin Patrick was, you know, better, and we didn't need Michael Cole, we wouldn't have him there. Because originally it was 2-man booths, wasn't it? So hopefully Kevin Patrick can continue to improve and get better and find his feet, and, like, you know, then go back to a 2-man booth. But Michael Cole and Wade Barrett, really like those. So did you see that report that AEW are in talks with Punk to buy out his contract? Makes all sense because he was fired. No, I didn't. I wonder. Let's have a look. Punk AEW contract. CM Punk was fired from AEW because of an altercation. There's a new story that has popped up that is causing a bit of confusion. A report is going around saying that AEW is trying to buy out Punk's contract. The story was true, but it was true a year ago. The fact is, it turned out AEW wasn't interested in buying out Punk's contract. The reason that story is getting more traction lies on the fact that Wrestling Observer Radio uploaded the wrong episode this morning. That's true. This is ringside news, apparently. Fans have seen a few stories circulating from the October 22nd, 2022 episode of Wrestling Observer Radio. This also includes Chris Jericho's contract news that he is in another deal with a company. Both of those stories were true, but from a year ago. So there we go. The reason, so you're right, it doesn't make sense, but that's the reason why it doesn't make sense. They, Wrestling Observer uploaded the wrong episodes, and apparently people have listened to it and have believed that it was new and current, and so they've gone around and jumped on Twitter and shared the news, but it's actually a year old. That's good. I like that. That's funny. That's right. We do say, though, don't we? Don't believe everything you hear. Make sure that you are fact-checking things. Where possible, try and fact-check things. Although that's a hard one, because to be honest, that's from Wrestling Observer. So if I had sat down, if I hadn't heard that episode last year, which I wouldn't have, and I sat down and gave it a listen, and I'm like, what are they on about? They're trying to buy out CM Punk's contract. But I could hear Dave Meltzer saying the words, and it's from an episode that was uploaded this morning. I totally get how that has caught people out. It would catch me out as well. I've no doubt. Hayden said, Booker T and Vic Joseph is perfect commentator team on NXT. I love Booker T's commentary since he was a commentator on Smackdown in 2011, says Hayden. Trini said, Meltzer was smoking crack with Tony after Collision. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's all cracking. Big Time said, did you... Warner Brother Discovery is looking to sell to NBC in 2024-2025. Warner Brother Discovery has passed up keeping NBA rights to cut costs. That could be a reason there's a holdup on an AEW TV deal. I haven't. I mean, to be honest, I don't really go searching for that sort of news. So the way that I kind of look for news is I'll go to the wrestling websites like Fightful, Wrestling Observer, blah, blah, blah. Have a look, see what's happening there. And then just a Google search, really. I'll have a look, see if I'm tagged in anything as well. But if there's nothing there to do with like a WBD deal or all this kind of stuff, then no. I don't look for AEW news. So I don't search for like AEW contract news or anything like that. So no, hadn't seen that news. Obviously, that seems like a little way off, doesn't it? So we'll have to see kind of what comes of that. If they do end up leaving that station, it will be very interesting as to where they could go. I mean, for the right money, would someone like Fox be interested? Because Fox had Smackdown, and they are a big platform, and they can see that AEW gets consistent numbers. I mean, you know, I think, didn't it do 900,000 this week? So, granted, not the numbers that SmackDown get, but it ain't going to cost anywhere near as much as what SmackDown cost. So, I'm not saying that they're going to go to Fox, but I'm just saying it might not be horrific if they end up leaving Warner Brother Discovery, because they have surely shown now that they can get consistent ratings, even if the ticket sales have been slow. They've shown that there is a fan base that's there. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. I certainly don't think that if Warner Brothers Discovery don't extend their contract, that's it, they're done, they're dead. I don't think that. In this day and age, content is king, isn't it? Content is king, or good content is king. Because you've got so many outlets that are just every day clamoring for content. Every day, TikTok needs new content. YouTube needs new content. All the streaming services need new content. Amazon needs new content. Disney needs new content. Netflix need new content. If you've got a dedicated fan base, I mean, there's just seemingly endless different places that you could end up going. So, interesting though. The reason TNA is rebranding is because the business has stagnated. The past week, the ratings did 126,000 on Access TV. The last time they clinched 200,000 was in April 2021, says Big Time. Interesting. James said, some do get too obsessed with ratings. Problem with Smackdown leaving Fox is because wrestling ad rates are bad. The advertisers don't buy into selling the product to wrestling fans. Fox couldn't make money off of it. Okay. CM Punk return at War Games, says Kyle. CM Punk return at War Games? I don't think so. The latest news was that they are actually not in talks. But again, there definitely has been some smoke there, you know? So it's hard to know where the truth is right now. But right now, no. I'm leaning towards him not returning at War Games. Stephen, see you tomorrow. Yeah, we are wrapping things up. Trini said, I'm only interested in the corporate side because of DC Comics. I don't think Warner could save it. It's too storied to go out like it has been. Logan said, do you think Cody is going to finish the story at 40? I'm going to lean towards yes. Bishop said, quick question, thoughts on Excalibur? As a wrestling fan, I appreciate him telling me the different moves, right? I know that's something that a lot of people think can get in the way. Certainly him talking a million miles an hour, I agree, is a problem. But I think he is someone that has got a certain way of commentating. It can be a bit wooden. It can be a bit flat, a bit one-dimensional. Sometimes you just feel like you are listening to someone that is a bit of a robot. I think that sometimes I don't feel like he can really get across the emotion of moments. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm listening to an actual human being with feelings. Like, if it turned out that he was actually a robot that was being run by ChatGPT, that would make so much sense. Because he's got all this information about different moves. And whenever he does have to kind of do the emotional side of it, it seems so fake. And, like, just, I don't feel a connection there whatsoever. But the flip side is, as a wrestling fan, I do appreciate being told what these different moves are. Like, that for me is something that I actually enjoy about his commentary. I just wish that the other elements of it felt a little bit more human, felt a little bit more less wooden, a little bit more well-rounded. And so I'm not a big Excalibur fan. I think that he is fine for a certain level. I actually think he on Dark, from the little clips I've heard with him, when it's a more relaxed environment, you see, part of the problem is he's got to get over such big things and he's got to relay so much information that it's hard to not come across as wooden. So, but when it's a more relaxed environment like Dark and it's just him and Taz, that sounds so much better. It sounds so much better. You know, they're kind of talking and they're having a little joke about different things. and it seems more relaxed, and it feels like more of his personality is allowed to come across. When it's on Dynamite, it's like, blah, 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 blah. Now let's go over to this. Now we got this. Now we're being joined by this person. Now I've got to tell you about the match. Blah, blah, blah. Now I'm going to tell you about every move. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, if what you're looking for is a lead commentator that can just spit out information, blah, 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 this is your guy, right? This is your guy, because he can fire information out like a million miles an hour. But I definitely would like to see more of that kind of when he was on Dark and he's just having a bit of banter with like Taz, whatever. There is a balance, isn't there? I mean, even Michael Cole, when he had Vince in his ear, was very much like loads of information. The emotion didn't quite come across. But there was people that were criticizing Michael Cole for that. You know, there's loads of people that don't rate Michael Cole because of when he used to have Vince in his ear and Vince would tell him, get this over, get that over, like, you know, tell him about this, tell him about that, throw over to this backstage promo, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's a hard job. It is difficult. Lead is difficult. Color, one of the easiest jobs in the world. Color commentary, where you can just jump in and just have a bit of a laugh and like just talk about what you're seeing, and that's it. I mean, Jerry Lawler said that he never had Vince say anything to him. Vince would leave him alone. Never had Vince in his ear, just like this. And apparently JR would be like, oh, he's doing my head in. Vince is absolutely doing my head in. But Jerry was like, I'm having a great time. Because Color just jumps in and just, you know, provides those fun little moments and little jokes and has a laugh and, you know, easy job. Lead, oh, horrific. So I do feel sorry for him as well. I think there's better out there that are a bit more well-rounded. I think like Kevin Kelly, I really like, but and others, but I think it's a hard job, and I think he does a good job in that regard of getting the information out. But yeah, I think for me, I would definitely, if I was having a wrestling company, I would have him on boards, and I'd use him, but I don't think he'd be my lead. I would try and find a different lead. But I love hearing the love hearing about the moves. I know that's something people criticize, but as I said, as a wrestling fan, like, someone will hit something. There's so many moves that I've just never seen because you don't get them in WWE, and I don't watch loads of indie wrestling. Like, I'll watch the odd bit, but there's a lot of stuff that they'll do, and you're like, what the hell was that? And it's got some weird name. And you're like, geez, no. I mean, to be honest, as soon as I've heard it, I've forgotten about it again because I don't know when I'll see it again. But I do enjoy being told what it is. But that can also get in the way of it being and feeling a lot more genuine, you know? Tony isn't making deals for money, says Kirby. Big Time said, love the women in NXT getting a spotlight. 4 women's matches this week and 5 next week is a bit overkill. To me, it feels like it could be too much from Shawn Michaels. Anna said, yes, too many women matches were on NXT that night. I miss Todd Pettingale, said Erasure Mine. Let's go. James said, people moan AEW does 1 women's match a week, and now people are moaning that NXT are doing 4. Get a Jesus Christ on a bicycle. Jesus Christ on a bicycle. But the whole concept of near falls in AEW has been greatly watered down when you watch matches on Dynamite. Wrestling kicking out of finishers non-stop, only to win by a roll-up or a distraction. Kirby said, with all those women, they still almost got 800,000 viewers. Yes. Right. I think we're done, my friends. I think we are done. It was as I said, you know, we're doing these Sunday streams going forward. It's a good opportunity to talk about Raw, talk about NXT. We can kind of dig into SmackDown, but it does feel a little bit away, you know. certainly Raw and NXT definitely feel like we can dig into those. And of course, any stories that have dropped over the weekend. So it's just a good opportunity to kind of do that. So definitely, you know, we've been doing this for a good few weeks anyway, but we're certainly going to continue doing this. So we'll do it next week. Saturday, we've got Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. So we've got that on Saturday. Sunday, we'll do the stream, the Sunday stream. We're back, obviously, in about 24 hours' time to do Raw. We'll do NXT. We are doing AEW this week. I know it's on the chopping block, but I thought last week was okay. Didn't blow my mind, but it didn't upset me either. So we'll see how MJF Juice Robinson goes, and Okada apparently on the show, as we said. So we are doing that. Thursday will be my day to do research, and then, of course, Smackdown on Friday. We are building towards the next pay-per-view, which is Crown Jewel. And actually, off the top of my head, I don't know when it is. I do have a bit of a planner that's lined up. Okay, so Fury and Ngannou this week, Crown Jewel the week after. So, yeah, that means that we are probably, I don't know if we're going to, oh, that's interesting. I need to do, that means next Sunday I need to do predictions. Don't know quite how we'll do that. Maybe I'll do it as a video, and then we'll still do a stream, and we can, like, talk about them on the stream. Don't know. We'll definitely do a stream next Sunday, but predictions as well. And Crown Jewel is coming up the week after that. So that means we've got Fury and Ngannou this week, Crown Jewel the week after. Week after that is then UFC 295. So we've got that coming up as well. Then I think there's a week where it's probably going to be a UFC Fight Night show. But then the week after that is Survivor Series. So we're in a period now where we've got some pretty juicy things going on at the moment. And as we said, we've got that NXT show coming up as well. So, yeah, lots happening. So, right, we're done. Appreciate the support. Have a good evening wherever you are. And don't forget, as we said, we are back in about 24 hours' time for Monday Night Raw. Awesome. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.